What does it mean to be professional? To speak in a certain tone. To dress in a certain style. To move, to behave, to think in ways that are deemed appropriate by an invisible standard. But who sets this standard? And who does it serve? Professionalism is often presented as neutral, as practical, as necessary. But in reality, it is a costume. And like all costumes, it conceals. It conceals class. It conceals power. It conceals the mechanisms by which some are included and others are excluded. To be professional is to perform. To speak with restrained emotion. To dress without individuality. To suppress dialect, accent, passion, protest. It is to trade authenticity for acceptability. It is to erase the traces of one's origins in order to appear suitable for advancement. But suitable to whom? To the boardroom. To the bureaucrat. To the old money. To the normative culture of power. Professionalism is not about competence. It is about conformity. A polished accent is not more intelligent. A press suit does not equal more insight. But these are the markers that signal who belongs and who does not. The codes of professionalism are unspoken, yet deeply policed. They reward those who can afford the training, the grooming, the time, the translation of identity into something digestible. This is why it is a class disguise. Because it disguises advantage as merit. And it asks the rest to adapt or be excluded. You learn to hide your accent. You tone down your style. You rewrite your CV. You cut pieces of yourself away. Not to improve your work, but to survive the gaze. This is not about skill. This is about power. Power prefers predictability. Power prefers people who will not challenge the stage on which they perform. And so professionalism becomes a gate, a filter, a mirror in which only certain faces reflect authority. Let us ask, what happens to a society that mistakes polish for principle? What do we lose when real voice is replaced by rehearsed tone? And what do we become when the price of being heard is being silent about who we truly are? Professionalism says, fit in, and you may rise. But rise where? Into a system that required you to abandon your difference? Your story? Your truth? Let me leave you with this. What might a workplace look like that values presence over performance and authenticity over assimilation? We are told we live in a meritocracy. That anyone, from anywhere, can rise. That positions of influence and status are open to all, so long as we work hard, apply ourselves, and dress the part. But let us interrogate this claim more closely. Because while the gates may appear open, an invisible test is always being administered. A test of class, of performance, of tone. Yes, technically, anyone can apply for the role. But will they pass the unspoken audition? The subtle cues. The way one walks into a room. The way one modulates their voice. The ability to speak without too much expression. Without dialect. Without defiance. The class test begins not on paper, but in presence. We reward those who speak in rehearsed tones. We esteem the voice that has been trained to be calm, clipped, calculated, what we call professional. But what of the real voice? The voice that moves with cadence, with feeling, with rhythm. The voice that sings with lived experience, that does not fit neatly into corporate expectation. We fear it. We dismiss it. We label it unpolished. And yet, that voice carries truth. Professionalism, in its modern form, is not the neutral ground we claim it to be. It is a costume. And like all costumes, it is stitched with power. It hides advantage behind polish. It masks elitism with etiquette. It teaches people to perform respectability rather than cultivate reality. And so we ask, why do we still associate competence with this narrow performance? Why do we confuse polish with integrity? And more importantly, what do we lose when those who cannot afford to mimic this performance are kept out? Let me leave you with this. If you have to abandon your natural voice to be taken seriously, then what kind of system are we upholding? And whose comfort are we really protecting? Let us speak, now, of what is lost. When one speaks in the professional tone, the carefully modulated, tightly clipped, emotionally neutral voice, one is not simply communicating. One is conforming to an expectation, to a surveillance, to a structure that rewards smoothness over substance. The professional tone is not just a workplace standard. It has become a verbal uniform, a kind of linguistic suit and tie. And in 2025, this uniform is not taken off at 5 p.m. It follows us into the streets, into social media, into our homes. We judge others and ourselves not by what is said, but by how it is performed. Even outside professional settings, those who speak with fire, with melody, with accent, with texture are often viewed as lesser, less intelligent, less trustworthy, less capable. Why? Because they violate the code. The unwritten law that says, speak like us, or be marked as unfit. This is how power moves. Not through overt censorship, but through the subtle erasure of voice. Through the expectation that we must always be presentable, manageable, composed. And this is how the soul begins to fade. The vibrant edges of human expression are dulled to fit a system that mistrusts anything that cannot be predicted or tamed. We are not only disciplining our words, we are disciplining ourselves. We flatten our passion, censor our rhythm, mute our origins, until only the collective voice remains, sterile, rehearsed, and empty of life. Let me ask you this. What kind of society prefers a polished tone over a living voice? And what happens to a people who are trained to speak, but not to feel?